Okay, so as I mentioned, a lot of times, when we want to first start our SolidWorks, we're going to have our sketches already, our profiles, whatever it is that we need. It may be a reference sketch that someone's done. Um, we want to use whatever we can to be as most accurate um, when we're doing our 3D modeling. If we have a physical foam model, then you're going to be pulling out calipers and measuring things and trying to jot that down. Where in doing a quick sketch for proportions that you can use to trace over can help greatly. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at and say, okay, hey, here is our object, and we're going to use this as an underlay so that we can get things in order. I'm actually going to do one little thing here. So what can be done is if we bring these in, and you can see I'm just going to crop it, and I'm going to get rid of a little bit of something, and I'm going to make it so that I can just crop it right at the edges. And I'm going to do it so that I know exactly what this dimension is.
Chevis, you're not screen sharing.
Okay, well, sucks to be you guys. Let's go back to screen share then. But I'm video recording, so hey, that's a bonus. Okay. There we go. So what I did is I went out and I found a proper front-on view. And my key thing is I want to make this a box so that I can crop it. And I'm just going to come in and we're just going to crop this image based off of these lines. So I now know, because I've cropped edge to edge, that this unit is 5 inches wide and it is 8 inches tall. So we're just going to crop that. I'm going to go File, Say As.
I believe you're sharing the wrong screen.
I'm recording on the right screen. Let's go back to share. Okay, so now you should see. So the key thing is that I want to get my image cropped, whether it be a sketch or whatever, and I want to crop it so I know exactly what the height and width is of that object. And I'll show you why here in a second. So I'm actually going to put this image in here, and you guys can download it later for your reference. But you can see that what I've got here is I know that, and it just so happens that, let's say my sketch is this way, that it is 5 inches wide. Let's just come in here, get our measuring tools. 5 inches wide by 8 inches. And here's the reason why I want this as that example. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to open up SolidWorks. And right off the bat, what we want to do is we're setting this up. So depending on what company you're working for, what industry you're in, they may use millimeters, they may use inches. For this project, we're going to use inches. So we'll come in, go to our options. Where are, oh, it's because I got the large buttons on here. Oh, whoops. I gotta go file new first. So we're gonna go file new, we're gonna start a new project. We'll customize it. Document properties, we're gonna make it, the units are gonna be inches. Now, we talked about this before, you know, what orientation am I going to design this at? So this is going to be my front face because that is the face that is the front. Down here is going to be the bottom, and then that's going to be the side. So if I look at my 0, 0, 0, I'm going to assume that this sits on the floor. If I want, I could have it at the center of this dial. As long as there's logic, that's what I'm looking for. I don't mind if you say my 0, 0, 0 is going to be right here. I'm looking for a logic. What is the reason for that? So for me, it sits down on the table. That's going to be my bottom plane there. This is going to be my front plane, my right plane. So what I want to do though is I have this setup, and I don't want to try to guess the dimensions. You know, if we say it's 8 inches high, then I'm going to have to kind of eyeball proportionately where things are. Well, the designer has already given me a blueprint. Albeit a pretty sketch, they've given me the blueprint. So I want to bring this image in. Now, what I can do is I can go feature on my front plane, and I can bring in a sketch. And then under the sketches, I can come and I can go insert. Oops. We're going to go tools, sorry. Sketch tools, sketch picture. And what that allows me to do is to bring in a JPEG image onto that plane. So just like I'm tracing over something. So I'm going to go to my desktop, and the very first one I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the one that was not cropped. So if I bring this in, it comes in, and you can see that it's coming in, and it is 30 inches in width, 30 inches in height. It's measuring the perimeter of the image. So same as if you do a sketch in Sketchbook Pro or something and it's 8.5 by 11, it brings it in at the 8.5 by 11. What that means is I then have to come in and draw a box, and let's say I do this, and I know my dimensions are 5 inches wide by 8 inches high, because, and this is something, I don't care if you're building a spaceship or if you're building a miniature for D&D, I want you guys to model 1-to-1 at all times. The reason for that is because if you need to print it, or if someone needs a dimension, or if you want to evaluate it, you can't scale a model easily. So if I now want to get this image to be the shape I want it, or the size I want it, I kind of have to move it, scale it around, zoom in, and keep playing with it until I get it to be about the right size. A little bit of an annoyance, and I'm never going to quite get there because I'm fudging it. It's not going to be right. Now, let's exit out of this. We're going to go back, and I'm going to go to my front plane. I'm going to create a sketch, and this time I'm going to insert the sketch that I cropped. So I'm going to go Tools, Sketch Tools, and I'm going to go Sketch Picture. And here I'm going to come to the cropped one. So, oops. Again, it's coming in massive. But I know that this is 5 inches wide because I cropped it perfectly in Photoshop. So 5 inches, well, maybe it's a little bit off, but. So I can come in and say, I want you to scale this, and I want it to be proportionate, and I want it to be 5 inches. So now, it's scaled perfectly. So I know that my unit is 5 inches by 9 inches. Therefore, I know that whatever these diameters are, they're proportionately accurate for what I'm going to want to model. Now, you can see that it's centered, or it's pushed, it's at this corner here. Well, I want it to be centered because I like to build things in half if I need to, or if I want to mirror it over. So I can move this. And you can see here along the X or along the Y. If I come in and say, well, from the Y standpoint, I want it to be 0. I want it to be right flat on there. I want the center of this object to be centered at 0, 0, 0. So I can go and say along the X, I want it to be negative 2.5 because that's half of 5. Now, if you're not good at math, I know it's 5 inches wide, divide by 2, but it needs to be negative. Whoops, I went in the wrong direction. So now I've got this locked in. I can come back, and now what I can do, we'll exit out of here. I'm going to just delete that sketch, but I can now come in and I can start modeling. And let's say I want to build this box here. Oops. So when I build my box, I can do it from the center or I can do it from a corner. I usually do it from a corner. But I'm going to come down here and I'm going to build it. Now, I want that edge to snap to the bottom here. I want that to be right at 0, 0. So we'll do our dimensions. We're going to go 8 by 5. Now we want to center it to make sure our box is centered, and you can see it's not centered. So 2.5. And again, you want to make sure you set things up in the beginning, because if that was a little bit off center and I went to mirror something, then what's going to happen is it's not going to line up. So you can see here again, the bottom of my object is here, but my box, although is dimensioned and I can't move my box left or right, I can move it up or down. So I want to make sure that the top of that, we'll go from there, is 8 inches. So now it's what's called fully constrained, and I have it there 100%. So what I can then do, and if we get complicated or if we get complex, and we will later on, we would have a side view and a top view, all the things to guarantee that what we're doing is going to make it right. I can now do my first feature command, which is to extrude. And for the intents and purposes, this is my front face, so I'm going to extrude it backwards. Now, that sketch stays there at all times. Something doesn't quite look right because it seems to be a little bit high. So I may have it not cropped perfectly, but for now, it's going to be good enough. If it wasn't, what we could do is say, oh, you know what? That's not that much. So what we need to do is make it 7.95. Or we can come in, delete that dimension, and we can drag it and say, okay, well, that's about the height they have it at. So now, if that's the height they have it at, I'm matching their sketch, I'm going to go and say, well, we'll make it 7.9. Because 7.906 is just an annoyance, and no one's going to recognize the 0.06. So there we can extrude it. Now you can see it's kind of, I mean, hell, we could add some radiuses and say, look, here's our 3D model. Do you want to see what this looks like in 3D? One of the things we can do is, you may feel that, hey, this image, I can't see behind it. I want to be able to see my model behind it. This is too dark. So I can come back, go to my sketch picture, and I'm going to make it somewhat transparent. So that when I'm sketching on it, I can see behind it. I may also want to come in and name that file. The reason I do that is so that I can quickly find things, especially when I've got a whole lot of sketches, or if I'm handing a model off to a client. I'll show you guys one model where I had to hand it off to a client, and they needed to be able to easily work on it, so everything was named. So like for here, main body. If someone wants to go back, they can go back and change that. Now, what I can next do is pull up my checklist, and I'll save that image I did, and I'll upload it to the board as an example for you guys. But what is the next thing that I'm going to build? You know, as I was looking at my model, you know, am I going to build this round area? Am I going to do this recess? So let's say I wanted to build this notch. You know, the nice thing about it is I'm going to come very quickly on this front face. I'm going to do a sketch. Oops. Again, pretty close, so we're just going to say 1.3. 0.05. And again, I want to lock it in space. So that, oops, that's supposed to be 0.45. So that it can't move around. I would probably even want to lock it or dimension it all the way to the bottom. And you can see that they've got pretty clean numbers. So it's 3 inches from the bottom. The 0.02 was me just drawing it in a little bit. Oh, it went the wrong way. So actually it's probably 3.05. and then I can do my first cut. Whoops. Now, if I want to see what my model looks like, I can come over, my little eyeball here, and I'm just going to hide the sketch. So there's the first step. Now, I could choose to add all the radiuses first. And again, if I'm looking at what the radiuses are, I'm going to look at the reference image that the industrial designer gave me. What do those radiuses look like? Do I want to just put those on? What are the part lines here? What are all the little detail things that, you know, we need to add? So this is going to be the start of the building of the model. You know, going through and adding that stuff, and then looking at all the separate items on there. I'll show you guys how to do the numbers. But we'll do that separate. But, you know, what is the whole pattern? So start building that out. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, I'm going to pause the video, or I'm going to stop the recording. Questions, comments?
I'm just confused. Do we have anything for next week? Or are we just doing the plan? Or do you want us to start building, or both?
So what I would like you to start doing is I would like you to start the plan. The moment you have the plan completed, put it up on the mural board so that I can take a look at it. Or if you want and say, hey, Chevis, can you take a look at my plan and what my thought process is? You don't have to. And then I want you to start building. And everybody's gonna get at different speeds. What I'm going to do for the next class is I'm going to continue modeling the model. But I think getting that plan, getting that underlay in, and then starting to play around with the model is a good start for everybody for now till next week.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll send out an email to everybody about this. Other questions?